I'm just gonna warn you now, full spoilers for Eternals ahead. That being said, yeah, I saw Eternals and I thought it was super intriguing, and I'll probably follow this video up sometime next week with a full analysis video on its themes or whatever, but I wanted to get this one out quickly because even if you haven't heard this Thanos theory I'll be discussing yet, I can practically guarantee it'll be everywhere in a few days. It'll probably even be a film theory video. So yeah, let's get ahead of this and debunk it. But in order to debunk this theory, I have to set out the theory first. And I've not actually seen this as a full theory anyway yet. I've mainly pieced it together from my own observations and Reddit speculation and things my friends have said to me. If no one else has put this together by the time this video is out though, they definitely will soon. Whether that's in the form of a YouTube video by someone else or 1,000 clickbaity screen rant headlines. But here it is at any rate. We see in the first post-credit scene Eros, or Star Fox, played by Harry Styles. This is interesting for a few reasons. It gives us a hint to where this story is going next, and he was an Avenger for quite a while back in the comics too. I genuinely feel this is perfect casting. But the most intriguing part of Eros' brief appearance is the information we get from him, that he is an Eternal from Titan and a brother of Thanos. Now, without doing a whole segment on this, comics Thanos was very much a part of the whole Eternal/Deviant lore originally, and it looked like back in Infinity War and Endgame that the MCU was eschewing this whole side of things entirely, and having old Purple Ballchin here just be some alien warlord. You know, a relatively normal guy. But clearly there is some link here. And here's where things get interesting, because if Titan was inhabited by Eternals, as Eros suggests, this indicates that, like Earth, there was a little baby Celestial growing within the planet's core. This movie tells us that Eternals are sent by the Celestials to planets seeded with these giant space babies to nurture intelligent life and fend off deviants, so that the species' life force can eventually swell enough to feed an emerging Celestial. So presumably this was happening on Titan too, and if someone like Thanos were to figure out this truth and try to stop an emergence from happening, a bloodthirsty but effective way to do so would be to kill half of the world's inhabitants.
And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike.
Thanos' goal on Titan and subsequently across the universe was to halve populations and afterwards manage their level of growth. And if this happened to Earth, Eternals indicates, then Tiamut probably would never have woken up. After all, if the threshold for emergence here was 7.5 billion or whatever, dropping this down to a cool 4 bill or so would theoretically preclude the end of the world. So we know Titan had a similar problem, and we know Thanos was personally linked with the planet's Eternals. And the plan he references in Infinity War, the one that was rejected, seems like a solution that would genuinely have avoided an emergence. And what's more, when we go to Titan in Infinity War, something truly awful seems to have befallen that world. It's not just overpopulated or ravaged by war, it's completely arid and scorched, and even its orbit has been disrupted. Honestly, this kind of seems like the shell which would remain of a planet after a Celestial had emerged. So, is this the case? Was Thanos right? Well, no. Quite simply, there is a laundry list of reasons why this doesn't work as an explanation for Thanos' actions in the Infinity Saga. First, Thanos gives his supposed reasons in Infinity War, and they're nothing to do with the Celestials.
Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around.
They're just about the more mundane downsides of overpopulation, like those proposed by the Georgian-era thinker Thomas Malthus, who essentially thought that population growth scaled exponentially and that as a result it was unsustainable and would eventually cause huge problems. Incidentally, this model of population growth has since been pretty much disproved, so don't worry too much about that, but that's where Thanos' motivation appears to be rooted. It also explains why he goes on his crusade of galactic depopulation. While not every inhabited planet has a celestial egg in it, every inhabited planet, in the eyes of Thanos and Malthus, is in danger of overpopulation. By the by, I don't believe this is Thanos' true motivation. I think this is all self-deception, and Thanos doesn't even necessarily realize it himself, but he's actually driven by something of a god complex. Moreover, I think Infinity War and Endgame give us this information pretty clearly actually, but that's a topic for another video, which I'll probably end up making at some point, so make sure you subscribe if you want to catch that when it drops. But either way, god complex or Malthusian economist, the motivations Thanos himself displays don't line up up with the desire to stop emergences. Second, and more importantly, Thanos is a bad guy. If it's changed so that his goal was a noble one the whole time, that retroactively flips the Infinity Saga on its head, and turns the Avengers into mass murderers by proxy. But whatever, maybe that would be narratively interesting, right? Well, no, because it doesn't work thematically. Again, this is a topic that I'm planning to explore more in depth in the future, but Thanos works on some level as an allegory for eco-fascism, the idea that to save the environment it's worth doing awful things, like stripping a society of its rights and freedoms, or even genocide. This is a conclusion which Infinity War, Endgame, and even What If strongly argue against. If Thanos' motivations are changed to be some misunderstood protector of the universe from a celestial threat, then this allegory becomes deeply problematic. But maybe Thanos' homeworld was destroyed because of an emergence, and seeing that it could have been stopped by his proposed slaughter, suppose he went mad and devoted the rest of his life to inflicting this slaughter on the rest of the universe. Or that his eyes were opened to the downsides of overpopulation following the Titan emergence, and that his Infinity Crusade was driven by a genuine sort of Malthusian urge born of this trauma. Well, these two possibilities are less egregious than the Thanos did nothing wrong solution, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Marvel Studios eventually retconned Thanos' motivation into one of these two. But again, they don't really work. First, I doubt how concrete Thanos' connection to Eros in the world of the Celestials can really be. He can't be an Eternal himself, I don't think. We see at the end of Eternals that Celestials like Arishem can just summon and control Eternals like Sersi whenever they're out of line. And also the text scroll at the start of the film notes the Celestials predate the Infinity Stones, and we see in Guardians that they've used them and are familiar with them. They are aware of the power of the Infinity Stones, so I think it's safe to say that if Thanos were an Eternal, whose goal with the snap would threaten the emergence of countless Celestials due to population downsizing, they'd have just summoned him and stopped him like they do at the end of Eternals. Now, maybe Marvel Studios do retcon Thanos to be an Eternal, but for this reason, that wouldn't really work. Plus, we see in What If that when Thanos becomes aware of a solution for overpopulation that just avoids its Malthusian pitfalls, that is, a way to increase resources to compensate for a growing population, he stops his quest. If he were driven by an awareness of celestial emergences, if stopping them was his endgame, he wouldn't be placated by a way to sustain large populations. So in summation, this is an intriguing theory, one you might have already seen, or if not, one you'll definitely see at some point in the future. But I don't think it works, and that's why. I'm looking forward to seeing the truth of Thanos' connections to Eros in the Eternals though, and I really think this film is better than the critics would have you believe. Depending on how this week's schedule works out, I should have a video out now on some of the reasons these reviews are so weird, so if it's out, it should be linked on screen. But yeah, drop me a like if you're feeling generous, and let me know below how much you like this theory, and if my debunks were convincing enough for you. But that's all for now. See you soon.